Hello and welcome to the Front Forum Focus podcast. I'm your host, Judge Karani, joined today by a very exciting guest, Aryan Marxaney. Welcome to the podcast.
Very, very excited to be here.
Could you do a brief intro of yourself?
Okay, so first off, my name is Aryan. I am based in the UK. Right now, as you can probably guess, we are geographically in the same location. I am currently in Kenya, specifically Kerugoya, which is in the Mount Kenya region, about 3 hours out from Nairobi. And I'm currently here on business, meeting George, obviously. Now, as far as my business goes, I'm going to give a brief introduction here. I run a couple of businesses. The oldest one and the longest running one is my online school. It is a K-12 American private school, which serves students all around the world. And then the other business which I run are learning centers. These are after-school programs and extracurricular hubs, so in-person locations. And I have 3 locations in the US, 1 in Brazil. We're opening 3 additional ones now in Kenya. And then we also have centers which are opening in Malaysia and in Indonesia. And I also am involved in quite a few other educational businesses and other businesses. Anyways, I'll let George take it away.
So, education is a really cool space and it plays a huge role in the economy. What are your thoughts about that role and how it is being applied?
Well, what I would say is there are 2 sides of this education playing a big role in the economy. One side of this is the education industry is a major industry just because it's like saying, the retail industry is a major industry. Yeah, a lot of people think, education is just a matter of charity, and it isn't. It is. There are many people who make money from education, many companies which make money from education. Now, that doesn't mean these companies are conning people out of their money. It just means, they're providing high quality services, or at least many of them are. And in doing so, they are also making money by finding efficient ways to provide those services. But the other side of this says, and perhaps even more importantly, that education plays a key role in the economy because of its role in human capital. What I mean by this is, consider the labor force for a moment. Education is what allows us to have a more productive labor force. And this goes for all levels. Consider a coder, for example. If we provide coding education, we are increasing the productivity of this coder. Because now that they have more education, they know how to apply their tools better, they're going to be better at coding, they're going to have higher productivity. So in 1 hour, a more educated coder will be able to produce a larger or better output than a less educated coder. Same thing goes though for farmers, for example. If we consider in agriculture, if we provide really good training and professional development to farmers, their productivity will go up. So per square foot, for example, of land, they will be able to produce more crop. So the agricultural output per capita will be increasing. Anyways, I'll hand it back over to George.
Yeah, so what was the problem you faced so that you can now, begin your journey with?
Well, I have been in a lot of different environments education-wise. I attended multiple different in-person schools for the majority of my life. Went to traditional brick-and-mortar schools. Eventually, I transitioned to online schooling, which I have to say I was very, very happy about. I completely see why people would switch from brick-and-mortar to online. I definitely don't think online is a fit for everyone, right? I think that for some people, brick-and-mortar is a much better fit. For some, online schooling is a better fit. And for some, hybrid model might even be the best. But then, as I went into online schooling myself, and I think online schooling was a great fit for me, I did notice that there were multiple challenges and multiple issues which I saw with many of the existing online schools. And that's part of the reason why I started the Pinnacle Academy. It was about addressing what I saw that online schools perhaps weren't doing, where I thought these are actually business opportunities for me to build an online school which rectifies these issues.
Yeah, so having your business as a customer-oriented business, mainly many of your users being schools, kids, and also parents. What's the most common, common misunderstanding of your business that you have seen from your users?
Common misunderstanding of the business. Well, I think, a lot of the services I provide are a bit unique in nature. So the online schooling is, it's a confusing concept to wrap your head around if you've never been exposed to it. I can tell you right now, in the Kenyan market, just explaining, or in the Brazilian market, explaining what we do, like how does this model work? What is an online school? Because people, when they hear school, they think, I drop my kid off in the morning, I pick them up in the afternoon, and in the time between, they do absolutely every single activity. So they assume, online schooling is, they're very confused as to what this online school concept even is. And this is a key point, explaining this to them. And another thing is just, a lot of salespeople have a bit of this tendency to tell you that everything is going to be fine. Everything's going to be great, everything's going to be fine. And ultimately though, what this type of communication leads to is customers being disappointed and, wanting to leave and stop buying the product. For me, one of the key things is providing very, very good customer education initially and explaining stuff like, look, if your kid is in elementary school and you go with online schooling, you as a parent are going to basically be responsible for regularly ensuring that this child is learning the content they need to. So just sitting the child in front of the computer is not going to be enough. You literally need to sit with your child in front of the computer and guide the learning. See, a lot of people think this is just a plug and play model. It is, right? The platform is there, the teachers are there, all of this is in place. However, the kids are still going to need a lot of support from a parent, especially in the early grade levels. So educating parents about this is quintessential, and yeah, that's a key thing I would say is part of that whole, explaining stuff and clearing up confusion for customers.
Yeah. So, the online space is quite tricky, mostly with the parents trusting the online space, trusting their kids with devices. The online community has also grown hugely over the last couple of years. So how have you built your trust around your products to parents, schools, and also kids?
Well, I have to say there are two parts of this. One of the biggest ones is the fact that we have the learning centers. These learning centers serve as beacons of trust, if I can say it that way. They are often in rural communities, because you have to understand the trust in online products is often much larger in big cities than it is in rural communities. Somebody, for example, I'll give you a Kenyan example, someone in Nairobi is much more likely to trust something which they find out about online than someone in the countryside. And for us, it's exactly the same. So this is why our learning centers are established in more rural locations, so that we can tap into that rural customer base and we can show them that we are legitimate in what we do. So they come into the learning center. In the learning centers, we're offering simple programs. We're not offering a full school program here. We are just offering extracurricular programs and after-school programs. They come in, and pretty quickly they see that we are legitimate. We are offering what we say we offer. We have the facilities we say we offer. This is almost like a way these centers serve as an insurance policy for parents, so that they don't feel like they're going to be conned out of their money. They see, there's a place where they can get physical, live support from a real person or from a real team of people. Now, this is part one of this whole building trust online, which is not really online, right? This is what I'm trying to say. A lot of it is still in person. The second part of this, though, is travel. So what I do is, as you've probably noticed, right now I'm in Kenya, and I travel a lot, visit my customers very regularly. I go and visit a lot of different schools. When I'm traveling, I will easily go and visit 5 to 10 schools a day, just meeting with people, introducing myself, because ultimately, in the education business, it is a little behind, and people do still value having that face-to-face contact. And unless they are the ones who have found you, unless it is the customers reaching out to my businesses via the websites and saying, we are interested in your product, which does happen. If I am going out to market to people, honestly, it is very rare that it will work through, me reaching out via digital platforms. It's much more likely that we will get the results we want by actually speaking to people in person. Because the moment we speak with people in person, especially decision makers, they can vouch for me and for my business, because I've proven that, hey, I'm real, I'm showing up, I'm right in front of you.
Yeah, so I'm sure now it has been a few years since you started, your journey in building products in the education space. What has been the biggest challenge for you as an entrepreneur?
Well, I have to say the biggest challenge has always been getting customers. That's being completely honest, right? It's not easy at all to get customers, especially customers who are willing to pay. But honestly, even customers who are not going to pay. Like, even when you offer a service for free, it is so tricky to find people who want to engage with that service. It has taken a lot of work to get my business to a point where customers are coming in by themselves and we have, marketing systems and everything in place. But that said, there's still a lot to be done. Like, the online businesses have a lot more capacity than what we currently have in them. And the key reason for that is just that the marketing for new customers is very tricky. You'll find out pretty quickly, a lot of people, they think that all the work is in building a perfect product and whatever. And that's what I thought too. I built a really cool product. But very quickly I also noticed that finding customers was much harder than building the product. And now a lot of the work I do is actually, I speak to a lot of customers or potential customers. And I understand, okay, what do you want? What do you want? What are you looking for? And at this point, because of how I've built up the business and because of the offerings I have, pretty much anything in the education space, I try and be a one-stop shop. So you come to me with any need, anything from I need English tutoring to I need to prepare for this exam to I need a full online school to I need in-person classes for piano on this date. So whatever it is in education, in any country, I aim, and Digitus aims to be the one-stop shop for all of those things.
Yeah, so, what has been the most interesting, moment for you?
What has been the most interesting moment? Most interesting? Wow, this is a good question. I would say the most interesting moment has probably been when, and I won't give the details on this one, but there have been many times where I've launched products and I've basically launched them into an abyss. I've said, I think this might work. I'm going to test it out. And you have to invest, right? I'm going to invest time into, building out some sort of product. I'm going to invest time into building a digital presence for this product. And now I'm just going to see what happens. And to be honest with you, some of these things have not worked out and I've had to pivot massively. But some of them, which I never thought would have worked out, they had these really surprising results, which were, incredible to an extent that I was like, wow, I have to keep going like this and I have to keep trying new things on a constant basis.
So what would you say motivates you as an entrepreneur in the education space?
What motivates me?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of entrepreneurs say, it's the community of entrepreneurs and everything. I wouldn't say that at all. I'm not exactly a social creature, really. I enjoy building cool stuff, and I really, really like building cool stuff. And more than that, though, enjoy providing what I like to think of as real services. Nowadays, there are a lot of companies who will advertise something and they don't really provide a real service. The customer service is terrible, which they're providing. It's all of that, right? I want to find ways to actually bring real value to customers. And a lot of the stuff I do, I try and offer stuff at very affordable prices so that it is something which is as accessible as possible to people from all income levels, from all walks of life, and from all geographies. But at the same time, I try and make sure that it still is successful as a business. Now, as far as what motivates me, I think it's just building this. And I really, really love creating something where all of the pieces just start to fit together. And as this goes on, as I add more and more products in this space, it very quickly becomes a thing where Digitus is a brand people trust and people keep coming back to. People come to us, and this has happened recently a lot. People come to us for something small, they need lessons in guitar or something like that. And then they see, wow, this is a real legit service. They're doing a great job. What they're providing goes above and beyond what they said they would provide. And very quickly, they're coming back to us for all sorts of things. They're coming back to us for math tutoring. They're coming back to us for other educational services. They might even come back to us for help with applying for colleges. So the idea is we provide a high quality service, and in doing so, people not only come back themselves, but they also spread the word about the work we do.
Yeah, so that's pretty interesting. You were mentioning your journey, also starting like learning from traditional schooling. Have you learned anything from the Kenya schools? I mean, for us, traditional kind of schooling, started within the community. You have like elders who are teaching like kids, and obviously there's about like culture, right? So like, people just like the community elders teaching like culture to kids, like boys, you do this, behave like this. What has been the most interesting things that you have learned and put in your products? Also like considering that you travel a lot.
So for Kenya specifically, or overall?
You can start with Kenya, then you can go over.
Okay, so what I will say for Kenya is there are a few interesting things I've observed here. One of them is that, the kids are seen as kids of the community. And there's this communal aspect to education, which definitely doesn't exist in every culture, and it's impossible to make it exist in every culture. But this is what I want to create with my staff. And what I mean by that is a lot of schools, especially when you get to the secondary level, you will notice that what happens is that basically, they'll have a math teacher, science teacher, English teacher, social studies teacher, and these teachers will all be working completely independently and not in conjunction with each other at all. And in most schools, this is the case. This is one thing which I've tried very hard to change at my school, and there are very few schools which do this, and I have actually met a couple of schools which do this, and I find that amazing, and I really want to support them. What I like is this, when the teachers see it as a community, it means that we form like a community of learning. It's a collaborative style of learning, and it means that we create interdisciplinary connections which ultimately help the students a lot in the long term. That's what I would say is one of the key things that I've taken from the Kenyan, societal system, school system overall. But another thing which is interesting, and this might be a little bit of a controversial one, but obviously the international schools aren't really part of this, but I'm talking more about local private schools or local public schools. Over here in Kenya, you will see that the class sizes are very, very big. And I mean that, they are really big. Here there might be classes of 40 kids. This is large by most standards in the Western world. So it naturally begs the question, how is this something we can learn from? Okay, well, I can tell you how this is something we can learn from. What I've noticed is there are many Kenyan students who, despite the fact that, at home they might be speaking, Kikuyu, they might be speaking Swahili. These Kenyan kids are speaking very good English. Keep in mind here that English for them is a second or third language that they're learning. In addition to this, these kids are clever. They are achieving really great things, and they focus in class. So when you think about this, they are in such large classes, and they're able to focus, and they're able to take information from these classes. And then I look at, Western markets where our class sizes are much smaller. We have classes maybe of 15 or 20 people maximum, right? And in these classes, the students are struggling to retain information. It might be that, given Kenya's development as a country, education is just so much more important to the individual that it really becomes the top priority. I think that's a big part of it. But I think there's something to be learned from. Clearly, it is possible to focus in these group environments and to really focus on the content of the lesson and take something from it. And maybe there's a way to learn from this attitude and this hunger for knowledge and for education, which I think is much stronger in Kenya than it is in many parts of the Western world.
Yep. So for the society, kind of model, I've seen, a few people comment about it, and like now things like YouTube, which are open sourcing like information to everyone, I see that as also like a community-based, a society-based kind of model of education. So do you think like even with online systems like learning with cohort-based systems, that is going to be more of the chance when you're going forward to how learning is going to happen, or is it going to be more like self-based systems?
So I think there's value in both the self-paced and the cohort-based systems. But I think I think YouTube is great, right? It's a great resource, and some students, like really self-motivated learners, will go on YouTube and they'll go through a full course. But at this point, a lot of these platforms like YouTube, what they've become, and this is unfortunate in terms of education, they've become platforms where we just go if we have a problem. What I mean by this is you're solving a math problem, for example, you're solving your math homework and you're unsure about something, so naturally you're going to turn to YouTube, you're going to look up this problem specifically, you're going to find your answer and you're going to leave. Instead of actually trying to fully understand the concept and the related concepts and going through this content, you are basically trying to find a shortcut and just solve this problem. And that's where YouTube is kind of headed, and that's what I see as a problem. So the self-paced learning, because it includes assessments, it kind of gets rid of that element, and it does still bring in that structure and everything. However, I think in terms of retention, the cohort-based live classes are really helpful because they allow you to communicate with others about the ideas that you're learning about. Because actually there's been a lot of research into this. When you are able to explain something to someone else, the pedagogical value you gain is much larger than if you basically just recite the information that you've learned through rote memorizations. If that is an option, if it is an option to have some sort of live classes, I think that's great. But I also think that personalization needs to be a priority. So some of that personalization can be done very well through live classes. And now with AI in full swing, I think there are many opportunities for AI to play a role in asynchronous learning and basically bringing or making the asynchronous learning as personalized as possible.
Yeah, so I think there's dangers that have been seen with online learning. Let's say like screen time. So many kids might have like 16 hours of screen time, brain rot content, maybe TikTok or something. That has negatively affected them, like their attention span has gone down.
Did you say 16 hours per day?
Yeah.
Ow.
Some of them have a lot of screen time. And obviously now with AI, most of these systems are becoming better at, the algorithm is becoming better at personalizing content for one person. So how do you see us combating this challenge?
Okay, so the first thing to understand is why. Why do people go on social media? It's interesting, right? It's an interesting thing to understand.
Yeah, for entertainment.
For entertainment is one thing. For validation is another. People go onto social media because they don't get the validation they need in real life. People go on social media to talk about or to communicate about a life they don't have. People go onto social media they say it's for entertainment, but I think it's also just about passing time. And if you are passing time on social media, the natural question to ask is, why aren't you doing something else, right? Especially considering, I would understand if social media were a learning platform and you were enriching your brain by looking at this content. But ultimately, I've looked at social media myself. I've downloaded and then deleted a lot of these apps because of how terrible they were, because I really didn't understand the why behind it. I will give you an example here. I have seen videos of people posting about their life. Literally just, I get up in the morning and I go and have breakfast and then I go and take a shower and then I do yada yada yada. And it always wonders me, who is watching this? Who feels tempted to watch someone else's routine of what they do for the day. So, it really, everybody is always trying to live up to what someone else is doing. But instead of actually trying to live up to it, they're simply watching it. They watch how people do these intensive workout routines, and then they eat this breakfast and, it keeps them so fit and whatever. But it's not like they're implementing this stuff. Most people don't implement it. Instead, they just watch it, and they watch this content repeatedly, right? So what I can say is social media does have an educated value if we actually listen to people who have an idea about what they're saying. Sure, if we actually listen to it and implement it, this could be helpful for us, but we don't. Instead, we simply watch this to pass time, and that's really sad. Another thing I just want to add as an additional point here is the side of social media in schools. You see, before social media was there, you can imagine, you would go to school and, every kid would have a chance at being the famous kid. 1 week, one kid might have lost a tooth, and they'd be, the one who could spit through the tooth, through that little hole, and they'd be the cool one, it would be like the sensation of the school. And the next week, somebody comes in with a violin. The next one, somebody comes in sneaking in a frog onto the campus. And all these activities are kind of cool, and everyone, gets around in a circle. This kid is like a mini celebrity. They get that attention. They feel like they've actually done something cool. Okay, now a typical school, let's say they have 500, maybe 1,000 students. Okay, that's fine, Each or many of the kids are going to have that chance. With social media, though, that competition goes way up, because now you are no longer competing against 500 or 1,000 students. On Instagram alone, I think you're competing against 1 billion. 1 billion people, right? Now, if you juggle, your juggling might have been really cool in school. People would have looked at it. But now, because of social media, everybody is exposed to the craziest things. Now, it's no longer crazy enough to jump off, jump from a high staircase. Now, people need to jump off a building or jump off the highest cliff in order to get a single bit of attention. And in this way, social media has actually been pretty harmful. It has raised the level of all of this stuff, of the craziness in many ways. When we look even at some of the crazy acts which have been done in schools in America, for example, I've seen, for example, there were incidents where basically through social media, there was a social media escalation which ultimately led to people bringing in guns into schools, not to shoot, but, just as a dare, as a prank, someone else scratching up the principal's car as a dare. This is getting to a point where it really feels like we are just fueling each other's stupidity, right? And really, it feels like we have to do something about it.
So, in the education space, there's a lot of regulation that is happening. And it's a lot of fragmentation between different governments. With global standardization for education, do you see that as a huge challenge to institutions, researchers, to moving education to the next mile?
I don't see it as a challenge, really. I think the problem is that, some educational systems are losing their individuality, which I think is not so great. I think there is, I think we can learn from each other, definitely. There should be more cross-implementation of methods and of things between curricula. However, in general, I really don't see the challenge with standardization of education and of curricula. I don't see that as being a problem, really. Yeah.
So, finally, can you tell us about your mission, vision for, Digitus Network is heading?
Okay, well, I guess my mission at Digitus is to provide high-quality educational solutions to the world. And that is directly to customers, that is to businesses, that is to anyone who needs education services. And that's what we're looking at. And as we go forwards, it's not only education. Actually, here in Kenya, we are starting, the first within Digitus, the first, new industry, which is an expansion into hospitality, which is going to be completely new for us. And so you asked about the mission, and the other thing was the future of Digitus. I think it is expanding what we are offering and, continuing to build on these brands, so that each brand which Digitus represents is a brand which is so high quality that people come back to Digitus for its quality. It's like, when you're traveling, if you want to travel, in style, you might go to the Four Seasons, or you might go to Marriott Bonvoy, or you might go to the Hilton, or, if you want to travel in style, you're going to fly with Emirates or with Etihad. These are brands where anything they put forwards, you can trust because of its quality. And this is what we're trying to do just for education. We're trying to create something where whatever you need in education, this is a trusted brand where you know that you're going to get back high quality offerings which can help you along your education journey.
So, any last words for the audience who might be wondering what to do with their education? Maybe they're giving up with their papers, you don't know what the next move is. Career-wise, maybe job-wise is a challenge. Also, tell us more about maybe who your mentors were when you were starting.
Man, you keep coming with questions, don't you? Okay, so to answer the first question, sorry, I'm trying to think. Second one was mentors. The first one was
some inspiration for guys who don't know how to do their education. They might be having challenges moving forward.
Okay, with the education, one recommendation which I can give you is not to think in a limited way. And what do I mean by this? I mean, okay, for me, I've studied a bunch of different things. At the college level, I've studied math, I've studied economics, I've studied philosophy, I've studied ethics, I've studied psychology, art history, opera singing. I've studied all of these things at the college level. And a lot of people, they don't understand why. They think that, whatever you study in university should directly apply to your career. That is not necessarily true. For some people, it might be that case, right? But how I see these as all individual components of your journey. You have an education component of your journey. You should think about, what do you want to learn? What do you want to learn? That's it. Not what's going to help you down the line, what do you need for your career? That's a separate question. Right now, when you're thinking about your education, think about, what do I want to learn? For the career side of things, though, what you want to think about is, what do I want to do? What do I want to build? What do I want my lifestyle to be like? If you want your lifestyle to be such that you have, that you can rent a house in a specific place, you can stay there, you have a fixed salary, a fixed income and everything, you're going to want to get a job, Entrepreneurship is not the best thing for you then. If, on the other hand, you say, okay, I'm willing to invest in the short term and then, in the long term, I'm going to make money, then entrepreneurship might be something for you. Regardless, though, when you're considering your education, I would highly recommend that you separate it out a little bit and you say, okay, I really want to learn about this. And down the line, when you go into your career and your work, now you look at, how can I apply this to a career? Or maybe it doesn't apply to your career at all. Maybe it is just something which you have, an additional skill set. But I can't tell you how many times stuff I've learned, even if it's not remotely related to education, has helped me so much in this journey. Related to mentors, to be honest with you, the biggest mentors I've had are my family. They tend to be the ones who I go to when I need advice, and they're always very, very helpful. And as the business has grown and started, there have been certain people within my company who I have started going back to many, many times and asking for mentorship and advice. The important thing is, and I think a lot of founders make this mistake, they hang out exclusively with all the founders. And when you think about that, that is like, imagine you're a vegetable merchant, okay? You're selling vegetables. And what you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to meet with a bunch of other vegetable merchants and you're going to spend all your time with them. Now think about that for a moment. These other vegetable merchants, they don't want to buy your vegetables. You don't want to buy their vegetables. You're all going to sit around. You're all doing basically the same thing. There's nothing really that you're going to get out of it outside of nice conversation. So it's wonderful. Definitely network with other founders. But at the same time, when you're looking for people who can advise you, who can help you, you should be looking for people who are already successful, who've already built real things, because those are the people who can help you there. If you are a founder and you're starting something, instead of meeting with all the founders, meet with potential customers. Meeting with other founders, that's lovely, right? But that's like fun, that's like meeting with your friends.
Yeah.
That's really important to keep in mind.
So great. So for guys who want to reach out to Aryan, we link up the website in the description below. Make sure to like and share the podcast, and see you until next time.
Thank you.